Chris.
Hi.
Hello. Glad you're here with us.
All right. Okay. All right. We're in 2 Thessalonians 3:3. We won't finish it this year. We'll finish it starting back up again in February. I'll be out of the country in January. All right. So I think we started with Jerry last week. So I'll start with Chris. And Chris, could you read the whole verse for us?
Yes.
Translate it for us, please.
Pistos de estin ho kurios hos stereze humos kai puleze apo tu honero. So I have a day for but, or however faithful, but is faithful, is the Lord who will strengthen you and will keep you from the evil one, or protect you from the evil one. So,
Okay.
but the Lord is faithful and will strengthen you and protect you from the evil one.
Okay. And probably the word one should be put in italics there, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because it could be just from evil in general, couldn't it?
Yeah, I put both evil one or evil thing, but I underlined one because it seemed like the context was talking about somebody who was working them over.
Yeah. But day is postpositive, remember, right? And so it may indicate a transition. Sometimes it, however, continues the thought. So the Lord, that's nominative case, of course, the Lord, ho kurios. He is what?
Faithful.
Faithful is the Lord. Pistos. All right. And of course, that's an adjective describing him. And he shall cause you to stand, establish you, and to guard you from evil. Now notice here, the article may point back to verse 2. That's what I'm saying, the evil. And it could reach back to verse 2. So let's go back and look at verse 2 here. And in which case, I went ahead and had this evil men, unreasonable and evil men. And so, right?
So men is plural, but this is singular. The evil, I guess your man's italicized. Okay.
Yeah.
So if I translated the evil one, then it's pointing towards Satan. If you reach back to verse 2, men, so you're pointing it to a group of people, or possibly evil in general.
Yeah.
That's the three options?
Yes, that's three options. And again, we need to be fair with all the options and understand this. Of course, the word evil in verse 2 is plural.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I have a summary here, but your point that it's singular is probably a stronger case for your interpretation. Probably is. But it definitely with the article could be pointing back to the prior verse in the context. Right? Any comments or questions there? Might point back to verse 2. So I translated this, but the Lord is faithful who shall establish you and guard you from the evil one. But notice I did footnote it. I went with your view because it is singular rather than plural.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it could be used as a summary, and it'll guard you from the evil, as that is a second option, the evil, right? And that could be looking at everything as a kind of summarizing it all up.
From evil from Satan, evil from evil men.
Yes. Okay. See, that's ablative singular. From the evil. literally. And I just went ahead and put one. That was my translation. I went with what you did there, Chris, okay?
Mhm.
That doesn't make us right, but that certainly, what I'm saying is other translators did the same. Any questions? James, you got any thoughts on that?
I, as well, saw it pointing back to verse 2, and I put in the 1 as well. I did also add an extra will for the guard, will establish and will guard.
Okay.
Putting
Right.
it up front, of course, you could say it covers both.
Okay.
So I'm good with your
Shall
translation.
establish is future, and guard is also future. Will guard, shall establish, shall guard. Will guard is definitely there. It's in it's a verb very, very easily could be interpreted that way. Of course, being future tense, that would be correct. Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right. Now then, this gets us to, I'm rotating around. Jerry's first and Chris, and then back to you, James. Could you do verse 4? And then Jerry will do verse 5. Okay. If you would, please.
Yes, sir. Poitham and en curio efumas otiha parangalomen humin kai poeta kai poieseta. And I translated verse 4, but we have confidence in the Lord about you, that which we command to you, you are also doing and will do.
All right. All right. That ye both do and will do. Okay.
What are you doing with day? Oh, you put and.
It could be but. They is but frequently. Continuing the thought or pulling it with it. They kind of reaches back and pulls the context along with it. That's how you want to think of it. Right? We have confidence. That's perfect tense, isn't it? We have confidence and still have it, see?
And trust is that okay too? Just the trust?
Trust.
But we trust in the Lord concerning you.
Thayer gives trust as one of the glosses of word
Okay.
that could be
I
used
thought
for
it
it.
did, that's why.
It's a gloss, called a gloss. Okay. Right? That's fine. Trust is in the Lord. Now we've had that expression in the Lord, and that means in the knowledge of the truth and to be intimate with the Lord. And of course, in our study of 1 Corinthians 1:30 through 31, it's defined there because he goes back and quotes from Jeremiah. And what I did is I put those two verses side by side and see what Paul, by inspiration, used the expression in the Lord. And it is derived from having knowledge of and being intimate with. And so basically, that's the meaning of it. Things found about 35 times in the New Testament, and that meaning will fit every one of those passages where it's found. But if you have my notes on 1 Corinthians, just look at my arguments on 1 Corinthians 1:30 and 31. Touching or concerning upon the basis of or upon you, touching you. That you both, now we have kai. Now notice, let's go back up and look at it. We have kai, right here, kai, and kai again. And so when you have a double kai like this, the first one should be translated both and the second one and. Because you're tying things together. Remember, kai ties things together that are equal status. And so both and, that would be a good rendering of it, both. That's how the American Standard translates. that you both do and will do.
And I put continue for that second one because it being future active, I thought that was, you're going to continue doing what you,
Yeah, well, see,
you
the
have
future
been doing.
can be that. The nature of the future tense, your present tense is continuous action. The future can be either point or continuous action, right?
Okay.
So it could be either. So your interpretation is perfectly legitimate. Nothing wrong with it, okay? But it doesn't have to be continuous action, but that's a contextual argument there, okay? Will do, and I think continuous makes good sense, though, because the Lord intends we continue to do what is right. So, and Paul was saying he had confidence in him. You do and you will do the things which we command you, and that you won't just do it once. You'll keep on doing the things like we command you. So I think you've got a good reason to take it as continuous there, Jerry. I would go with it. Any Chris, you got any thoughts there? James?
No, sir.
All right. Now, you is, of course, in the dative case, and we give command to you. Now, we were studying this in the beginning Greek class, very early, and we found that some words, in fact, we even talked about it tonight, and so what we run into is para and gallo is a word that can take its object in the dative case instead of an accusative case. And so give command to you. Say, the things which we give commandment to you. Dative case. Okay? That makes sense? There are some words in English that take a dative object. And basically that's an indirect object. Okay? To exhort is one of those words that generally takes a dative object. Okay? So let's move on. Let me go back here. These footnotes will show you what my textual apparatus that I've used and the various manuscripts that have the reading that I've chosen. Okay. Any questions? So you can have those there in your footnotes. Okay. All right. Let's go into verse 5. And I think back to Jerry. Jerry.
Hode, Kurios, Katu, Thumai, Humon, Tas, Cardias, Ace, Tain, Agapain, Tu, Theo, Kai, Ace, Tain, Hu, Bo, Monain, Tu, Christu. I put also may the Lord direct your hearts toward the love of God and toward the patient waiting. And then I put of, from, or for Christ. I think it's for, but I'm not sure how I could get to the for.
Related to Christ. And it could be his, it could be the love, the patience of Christ, or it could be the patience related to Christ. Again, the structure in both English and Greek could be either. Right? And the Lord direct.
I was thinking it was, I took that as he wanted them to have patience, patient waiting. Don't give up. Have patient waiting for Christ, so that's.
Well, in the context, they were looking at the second coming and had the wrong idea about it. So
Yeah,
your thought is, your translation is good.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. They were,
Relating.
trying to get them to understand that just be patient. It's not now, but wait on Christ or wait for Christ. But anyway, that's the way I took it.
So this is optative. The word direct is optative case. See how the King James written it.
That's where I got may.
Okay. Both King James and Standard have direct. And Katothuno, Katothuno. It's to make straight or guide something. So what he wants them, and its operative case, it's a wish. And remember, most of the time operative is a wish and a desire that something be true. So he's saying, I desire, I want your hearts to be made straight by what?
Love of God.
Okay. With a view to the love of God.
With a view to the love of God.
Okay. All right. Any comments there? Into, the American Standard has it into or toward or the view to. I would probably take it that way, the love of God. Now, again, the love of God could be God's love that he has or our love for God. Again, the text doesn't answer it. We have to determine that ourselves. Okay?
Yeah, I took it as their love toward God, but you're right. I don't know. I just took it that way. I didn't give an option.
And into, Kai, and into what? Or with a view to what? So there's two things. So the love of God and
Toward the patient waiting.
Patience. These both. So these are equal rank. Love and patience are both stressed equally here by Kai. Right? Into the patience, with a view to the patience. Right? Okay. Now let's look back at what Trent says. Macrothumia, that's not this word, refers to patience with respect to persons, and hupomone is with respect to things, but it still could be the second coming of Christ. So the thing could be the coming of Christ.
Well, that's what I took it as.
Yeah.
Because that was the subject of their confusion and the subject of the evil ones who were trying to confuse them.
Yep. This passage does not reveal how God would direct the hearts into the love of God and the patience of Christ. That has to be determined by the rest of the Bible. That is, the Bible can't contradict itself. So if the Bible limits certain things, then we have to place those limitations on our interpretation of this verse.
And I think that's what Paul wrote, because he was inspired to write it by God, and now he's wishing and hoping that takes hold. That's the way I took it anyway.
These could be subjective or objective genitive, and they even could be ablative case. But my notes here have a discussion of subjective genitive difference and objective. One is the love of God would be God's love, and the other would be our love for God. That's the difference in the two. Right? And the Lord direct your hearts into the love of God and into the patience of Christ. I went ahead with it. The Greek verb is operative, expressing a wish on Paul's part. Question. Right? Now, Paul begins to rebuke those who will not work. We got some, what we call, when I was a boy, lazy bones. We call them lazy bones. Okay.
But it's a natural consequence of the problem that they were having, that they misunderstood that the second coming wasn't right now.
Okay. You've heard the expression lazy bones, I'm sure.
Yeah, you looked at me when you said the word, and I thought.
Oh, no, I wasn't thinking of you at all.
No, that's, yeah.
I can't imagine anybody would accuse you of that.
Oh, well, appreciate that.
You work hard, okay. Verse 6, if you would.
All right.
Why don't you just I'll take the first line, and we'll have
James.
James.
To Christu, okay.
Chris.
Yeah. All right. Para angelomen de human adelphoi in onomati tu kurio amon Jesu Christu. I have but for day we command you brothers in name or in the name of the Lord of us Jesus Christ.
Now, why is it proper to put the word "the" in front of the name? All right.
In name. Well,
If something is unique,
yeah.
you don't have to have the article with it.
Mm-hmm.
Remember,
Yes.
the word "beginning" never has the article.
Yeah.
And the name, we would say the name, but
Mm-hmm. I did add the. It's in parentheses.
Yeah.
But it doesn't sound right in English to not
No.
put the name and
Yeah,
make it definite.
I'm just, what I'm saying is I'm defending you putting it there.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay. I think it's because if something is unique, it's definite without the article. It's
Mhm.
already definite. So we'd have to have the word "the," add the word "the" in our translation of it. But we command, but we command, see, now, we command you, we give commandment to you. Who mean is what case? Dative. So we give commandment to you, see, brethren. Therefore is what case?
Vocative, so address.
Well, it's vocative case of address. In the name of the Lord, of us and our Lord, Jesus Christus, Jesus Christ. Okay.
I have a question on we command, and it hit me. Why isn't, since it's a command, why isn't it like an imperative? When it seemed like it's imperative that they obey, and that's why it's a command. So to me, I thought imperative would make more sense.
But it's indirect speech. We give a commandment to you.
Okay.
Okay.
I used the word charge again because they're both in that.
Yeah.
And I used it in the previous verse, so I made it consistent.
Charge. Okay.
So
it's not imperative because it's indirect to
yeah,
a group of people in the church.
yeah.
Okay.
Tell him what he's doing. I'm telling you what I'm doing. I'm giving you a commandment. I gave you a commandment. Now we command rather than the word here is in the indicative mood, not the imperative mood, not in the case of a commandment. But a thing can be a commandment if it's shown by the context that it's necessary to do it. Okay. Right? And sometimes participles will function as imperatives, like in the Great Commission. It's called the Great Commission. Right? Go into all the world. Those are participles. Preach the gospel to everybody. Although all creation he that believeth and is baptized shall be saved. And also Matthew 28. Jesus came and spake and saying, all authority given me in heaven and earth, go therefore and make disciples of all the nations. Those are participles in that verse. Verse 19 and 20, verse 19 particularly. Just a bunch of participles. And they function that way. I think there's one verb there and a bunch of participles. Right. So the context can make it a commandment. Okay. And the word here is the word for a command. And this basically, when you study this word, it's a commandment, like from the general to the colonel to the major to the captain and the lieutenant and the sergeant down to the ranks. It's a military term. So he's talking to the brethren, right? James, can you finish the rest of the verse for us?
Yes, sir. Stelestai humas apopantos adelphu ataktos peripatuntos. Screen went dark.
I'm sorry. I moved my wheel and
Okay. Time katatain paradosin hein paralabon par hemon. And I translated the rest of that verse, that you keep away from every brother who is walking disorderly and not according to the tradition which he received from us.
Okay. This is a very important passage because it gives us something very interesting here. A couple of things that are interesting. Now we command you, we give you command in the name by the authority of the Lord Jesus Christ. All right. And you, brethren, to do what? We're looking at the withdraw yourselves. All right.
I'd put it as avoid or withdraw yourself, because it's, I didn't know if withdraw here was a defined thing you do, like when we withdraw somebody, you treat them in a special way, or you just avoid those people that are trying to confuse you. I wasn't sure, so I think both.
Thayer says it's, from Stella, of course, to set or place, to arrange yourself, and to remove, and it's middle voice here. It's middle passive, it's probably middle voice. To remove oneself, to depart from.
Yeah, that's when I put avoid, but so it would be withdraw from.
I think withdraw is probably a good rendering. From every brother that walks. Now here's peripateo again, to walk around, see how you live. To walk in what? Disorderly. Now, I've had people that will do this. I've heard preachers that do this. They'll take that word that's translated disorderly, and they'll say, well, you're disorderly if you do this, this, or this. This word disorderly is defined in this context, and I think we're maybe stretching it too much. He's disorderly because he didn't wear this or that to church, or he didn't wear a suit, or I've heard people say that. He got up, he was disorderly because he didn't have a suit on or tie on when he waited on the Lord's Supper. And that's kind of foolish, because that's not in this context. Now, what he's talking about. What's he talking about? Well, for some people say you're disorderly if you don't assemble regularly. Well, they have taken the basic meaning of the word taktos, adverb of manner, and they've stretched it perhaps further than it was intended here in this context. Now, I believe you need to be assembling, but sometimes we use the wrong verse to prove our case. That's what I'm saying. I'm not sure this would prove it.
This was a misunderstanding on the second coming, and therefore stopping working and starting to be a busybody and mooching off everybody. That's what this disorderly is.
Yeah, that's what it is in this context. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So you don't want to stretch it. Just take the word disorderly and
find the correct verse to teach what you want to teach.
Find the correct verse to teach it. That's my point. Okay. All right. Any question? Now, of course, right here, the definition is given a person that's truant and he fails to show up for work. He's disorderly. That's the word that's used. So they've used that point to argue that you need to assemble regularly. Well, I believe you must assemble regularly. I believe that, certainly. But maybe sometimes we need to find another verse that maybe to not to stretch it. Right? And not after the what?
Tradition, but I put doctrine or precepts as a possible alternatives to that.
Right.
Too.
So this is the word for tradition, something handed down. And of course, it would be a doctrine or precept. It's handed down from who?
Paul just did just now, but
Which received from
the other
us.
writers did. Yeah.
Right.
So Paul
Traditions that come from the apostles are conditions of fellowship. Right. I would argue that traditions that come from men are not necessarily conditions of fellowship. They shouldn't be made. If the only place you can get that tradition is from some human that's not speaking by inspiration, I don't think you should make it a test of fellowship. It's a tradition here at the Barnes congregation that we have a Bible class at 9:30 on Sunday morning. And if we decided we're not going to fellowship any church that assembles at 10 o'clock on Sunday morning for Bible class, I think we're out of line. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
I took it as those things that he said, those things that he passed down, are the precepts we are to live by, and precepts doesn't lead to a misunderstanding of the point, to me.
A tradition is something handed down, and we have to say who handed it down.
And what was
If it
handed
came
down?
from God, yes, we follow it. If it came from man, we follow it if it doesn't cause us to sin, and if it's helpful to the cause of Christ. Our assembling at the same time every Sunday morning is a tradition. Okay, we don't have to do that, but it's much more convenient to everybody know the time we're going to be assembling. Does that make sense? It's just reasonable.
Can I pull out a different example along that?
Yes.
Modern is, what do we do as Christians with Christmas? That's sometimes controversial. I'm not necessarily saying we need a Christmas tree up in the church or anything like that, but someone brought out a point that one tradition that Jesus followed or he went to was the Feast of Lights in the New Testament. Some say, well, that must be a man's tradition, because we don't find that ever commanded in the Old Testament. Looks like it began between the Testaments. But Jesus, he went to it. It didn't cause any sin or anything with it. So some human traditions, if they're not
if a human
sinful, are
tradition
okay.
does not cause stumbling, doesn't cause sin, and it can be helpful to us, then it's fine to do it. If it's neutral or helpful. I just, now then, the question is, do we have authority to do it? Is there scripture that would prohibit that? I don't see anything to prohibit Jesus going to the Feast of Lights. Okay. And there's nothing sinful about it for that. So I would not make a big deal out of someone celebrating Christmas, but the church has no business doing it because it's a Roman Catholic holiday is what it is. We need to be careful that we don't elevate them.
Sure, but there's nothing wrong at home if people want to decorate or
I think
exchange gifts.
I think it's one of those things that is a personal judgment.
Yes.
But it should be kept personal and not made part of the church and not be binding upon anybody.
I agree. Yeah.
And if it becomes a stumbling block someone, we might need to quit it. So those are the rules that I see following traditions.
I do not put up lights, but it's not because I figure it's wrong. I'm just lazy.
Oh.
Traditions that come from the apostles are conditions of fellowship. Traditions that come from men are not conditions for fellowship. Right? Any question? That's my conclusion. All right. I translate, now we command you, brethren, in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, that you withdraw yourselves from every brother walking, it's a participle, and not walking after tradition which you receive from us. And walking is a way of living. Now he's going to explain what he's talking about. All right. Yes.
The word paralabon is aorist active indicative first person singular or third person plural. It can be either one. So since it's every brother, so it's like each individual one, but there may be more than one. Could that be they also? They received from us, since that word allows either one?
Yeah, it could be either. That's the contextual argument is which one it is.
Yeah.
Notice on the screen up there, it's either first person singular or third person plural.
I put them both down, but I underlined he, but
I've underlined first person singular he.
but I'm not sure, because every brother, there were those others. There may have been more than just one person in there doing that. And so any one of those that would do that, it's from that class of people who would do that you.
I don't know why I put first person singular. It could be that.
I just put them both and then underlined the one I thought it was, and then
I've
the
got
option.
first person singular. I think it probably would be. King James American Standard make it plural, third person plural, which I received first person, but which you received.
New American Standard
They
is
received.
what you received.
Yeah. I don't know why I've got first person singular underlined. I think it's third person plural. Now, wait a second. It's not third person singular, is it?
No, it's third person plural or first person singular.
Yeah.
which I thought was strange, but
I think it's probably third person. I have he here, which is completely wrong. Why I had a he there? I was thinking first person.
now, would it
Which
be
third- I was
they or
thinking-
would it
I was
be you?
thinking third person, which they receive from us.
Okay, good.
All right, that's better. Okay. Now, no, I went with, I made it first person. I made it he because every brother was singular.
But every
Yeah.
gives the idea of
Yeah.
there being more
Yeah.
potential. So I was really
And so
wrestling with
every seems like singular, but it's which they receive from us. That's hard, isn't it?
that. Yeah,
Kind of a little bit of a problem. And so traditions that came from the apostle, tradition from fellowship, but traditions that came from men that weren't speaking by inspiration, I'm talking about, and I know the apostles were men, but I'm saying their traditions were given to us, they're God's traditions.
oh, I know why I took it as third person, plural, because we're going to see that they are busybodies, and that's plural.
Yeah. All right.
One of these verses has that anyway.
All right, let's go on with verse 7. This is probably going to be about the end of it, okay? About 6 after, okay? Who was the last one to read? Jerry?
James.
James? Jerry, can you read that
Yeah.
for us, please?
Autoi gar, hodate, post day, meme, stai, hermas, hoti, uk, a tak te samen, and humin. For you yourselves know how you ought to imitate us, because we did not behave disorderly among you.
Right. But we did not behave ourselves disorderly. And maybe we'll have
The
time
word because is not the one I like, because it's how you ought to behave, or how you ought to imitate us, not because we did not, but as a result of we did not behave. That's what you. And so I couldn't find another word other than because. It didn't seem to be really the right word.
According to Robertson, Gar introduces an independent sentence. Okay. So verse 7 is a new sentence, independent. You yourselves know, right? Remember, a toy is probably a vocative case here, but self and how to imitate us. So Paul taught the Corinthians to imitate him, but when I look at it, 1 Corinthians 11:1, be imitators of me as I also am of Christ. So Paul's saying, imitate me only when I imitate Christ. If I stumble and sin, don't follow me. Paul taught the same thing in all the churches, 1 Corinthians 4:17. Therefore, he taught that at Thessalonica too. So imitate Paul when he imitates Christ. So really, who's our pattern?
Christ.
Christ is the ultimate pattern.
And there was a couple of times that Paul didn't imitate Christ, and he, so you wouldn't want to imitate that.
Now, if he's in this context talking about working for a living, he gave this commandment to all the churches. Everybody's work for your living, right?
What I really wanted to put down there was how you ought to imitate us as we did not behave disorderly among you, but I couldn't figure out how to get as in there. Because that's, to me, what he's saying is, as we did not behave disorderly, that's what you should imitate.
Well, it's to be neglectful of some duty. We weren't neglectful of our duties. He's going to explain that. Let's try it. Well, let's go ahead.
We have 5 minutes.
Okay, let's do verse 8. Chris, can you do verse 8 for us?
Ude, Dorian, Arton, F agomen para tenos Allah in kopo kai moxtheo nukta kai ameron ergazomenoi prosto min epi baresai tina humon. So I put hude, nor without payment or free gift bread did we eat from anyone, but I put by for in, but by labor in labor and hardship, night and day working in order not to be burdensome any of you, to be burdensome to any of you.
Okay. Not to be burdensome to any of you.
I wasn't sure what to do with
So
it.
we worked for our living. Now, the apostles had the right to be supported by the church, but Paul was working. And here it was a good thing that he did, because the church now has a problem on this. Paul could say, I gave you an example. I didn't have to work, and I did. So I worked. And he could have argued he didn't have to.
Especially when people, the disorderly ones, were taking advantage and living off everybody else. And they could point, well, Paul's doing it, and he didn't.
Now let's go back here. Allah, but Allah introduces a different category. So eating bread for nothing, for a favor, say a gift, but now we robbed. See, we didn't do that, but we did what we do. We did something completely different. We worked, labored night and day. We worked and labored night and day. Any question?
And I put the last part of that, in order to not overburden any of you, because it is an overburden. And that's what the other people were doing, was taking advantage and overburdening and then being busybodies too.
So they didn't just work at our day, they worked beyond night and day. So they were working more than the normal time of work.
Was 8 hours the normal day back?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Depending on the time of year, it was daylight to dark.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
That could be 12 hours, it could be 6 hours, or it could be
Night
18.
and day. And we might not, for the purpose of not burdening you. See? He's telling them why he worked. So I wouldn't be a burden to you.
But when he says epi baresai, that's not an overburden, it's just a burden.
Well, epi is probably an overburden.
Okay.
Bareo is a burden I bear, and epi is really upon, probably a heavier burden. Finish verse 9.
It is 1 minute. We can stay an extra few minutes. if you
Why
want
don't
to
we
do
finish verse 9, if you will?
Okay.
Okay. Chris, are you the one to read that?
Yeah, it's James's turn.
James's turn? Okay, James, can you read that?
Could I, if you don't mind, take a look at your translation again on verse 8?
Neither did we eat bread for naught at any man's hand, but in labor to bear working night and day in order not to burden any of you.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because ephagomen, to eat, is an indicative aorist active first person plural. Being aorist, I struggled with translating it with eat. Is there a better way to say that? And
Harris views it as a single act, not necessarily that it was a single act.
okay.
So that's what we have to understand. Harris views it that way, and it may be a single act, but it's viewing it.
It could be a whole bunch of events viewed as a system of events.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yes, sir. It just struck me as
Okay,
little-
let's try to finish verse 9. That's the end of a thought. So
Okay.
we'll have that. Go ahead, if you will.
Verse 9, uk hoti uk exomen exousion alina eatus tupon domen humin esto mimestai hemas. And verse 9, I translated, not because we don't have the right, but in order that we may give ourselves an example to you, so that for you yourselves to imitate us.
Okay? So we did that not because we didn't have the right to be supported, but because we want to be an example.
He's pattern,
And an example is a pattern,
but
isn't it?
yeah.
Okay. It's ace toe with an infinitive is the purpose clause, so that they would have some. I translate not because we don't have the right, but we make ourselves an example unto you that you should imitate us. We'll pick this up in February and hopefully finish it in probably 1 or 2 more nights. Okay. Then I want to pick up, I think we'll just pick up 1 Corinthians, start 1 Corinthians that time. Okay, good to have you in class, everybody.
Don't forget to send us the Greek text of Corinthians so we can get started.
Thank you so